Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 300 of Real Blend, a podcast that started as an award show, had Alfonso Cuarón on as a guest, talked with Robert Rodriguez about being a chocolatier, used to end every episode by shouting Dunkirk, named Damien Chazelle the patron saint of Real Blend, and eventually got to tell him that in person, got followed by Kevin's mom a couple of thousand times, met listeners in London, Chicago, DC, Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles at the New Beverly, recorded a show at Quentin Tarantino's house, got Christopher Nolan to yell Dunkirk, sort of, went viral, went viral with Sir Ridley Scott, thanks to A24, calls Hans Zimmer a show friend, ruined some dude's screening of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, sometimes goes by the name The Chuckle Club, and now has Denis Villeneuve as a returning guest for Dune Part 2. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at Cinema Blend and a co-host of the Real Blend podcast, as I have been for 300 episodes. And everyone out there knows my OCD really appreciates a nice round number. It's so beautiful. Joined this week, as always, by my wonderful friend Kev McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev. How are you?
I get the first hello on 300.
You do. Yes.
I'm so excited about that. Hell yeah, baby. Now I know where I'm at.
Let's go ahead and move on to 301.
Let's
go.
And Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Jakey, how are you, my friend?
Hey, 300 episodes in and I have not quit yet.
It's true. You guys have no idea how many times we've had to talk Jake off the ledge and keep him.
How many bits have we had going and then just sort of abandoned by the wayside? That being me quitting being one of them.
Oh yeah, that was a good one for a long time.
That was a thing for a long time.
Someone reminded me also. I don't remember. I think
y'all just kept pissing me off.
Yeah, you and I often agreed on stuff, and Jake was wrong about so many things early on. Someone also reminded me in an email how much we always used to blame stuff on Gabe when Gabe didn't talk.
Oh, that's right.
But then Gabe finally joined the show. Hey, Gabe Kovac, how are you?
Hi, I'm here. I'm real. Yes. Or am I an AI imagination? We've been lying this whole time.
Yes. On this week's show, it's episode 300. We're going to celebrate after we get to our main guest. His name is Denis Villeneuve. He has a movie coming to theaters called Dune Part 2, and he decided to swing by the Real Blend podcast. Indie, as they say. Yes. To talk about his sequel. Let's get to housekeeping really fast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Thank you very much for joining us as you do every Friday or whenever you decide to catch up with the show. We drop 7:30s Eastern. Please head down, give us a like and a subscribe. Join us here each week for new episodes. For our audio listeners, if you want to join us in video form, head to youtube.com/Real Blend Podcast. But of course, we're available all different places you get your podcast needs met. If you want to sign up for Real Blend Premium as well, too, it gets you an ad-free version of the show, a newsletter from myself. So check the description for information on where to sign up. Okay, so it's March 1st, and we have been planning not just for the 300th episode, but for this entire month, we are turning ourselves into Dune Blend.
Dune Blend.
Dune was a very exciting movie for us.
I assume Gabe's got a really cool, expensive graphic at that moment.
Yeah. I wish we had Skarsgård's voice going, "My Dune Blend.
My Dune Blend."
That'd be awesome.
So 300, the 300 celebration and the Dune Blend celebration is going to kick off with Denis. Well, actually, that's not true. Hold on. I'll explain that in a second. It's going to continue for weeks to come. We do have Rebecca Ferguson, the great Rebecca Ferguson, is joining the show. She'll be our guest coming next week. We are currently working on an If It Happens that we're recording this week before this episode drops. So by the time the episode drops, hopefully it will have happened. More on that as it comes. And I want to let people know that Dune Blend officially did kick off with director of photography, cinematographer, Greg Fraser, which is an episode that's now available on our feeds, and he was phenomenal. Hopefully you've listened to that by now. Greg Fraser's credits are ridiculous, and getting to talk to him about cinematography was an incredible, incredible Geek Guy session, as is this interview right now. Huge fans. That's such an understatement. Huge fans of Denis Villeneuve.
Hey, Sean.
Can't believe. Yeah.
Do you think Denis considers us friends yet?
No.
I guess we'll find out. He absolutely does not.
Certainly does not. Not like Hans. Hans is show friends. Denis is slowly approaching, thinking about being our friend.
Christopher Nolan brings us up and he goes, hey, Chris, I'm not friends with the Roblin guys. That's a joke that will make sense. This
will make a lot more sense after you've heard Denis. This is Denis Villeneuve returning to the Real Blend podcast to talk about his new film, Dune Part 2. What did you bring us?
Yeah.
Well, comfort food.
So we are the Real Blend podcast. I'm Sean. That's Jake and Kevin. We were lucky enough to have you on for the first Dune. We're thrilled to have you back for Dune Part 2. I wanted to let you know that we're so happy that you delayed your film's opening because it meant that you were able to be our guest on the 300th episode of this show. So it's a milestone for us, and we're thrilled to have you as our guest. So thank you very much for that.
That is touching.
Well, when we had you on for Dune Part 1, you were very coy about Dune Part 2. You know, you gave us all of the if they let us do it, and you know, naturally every film fan believes the Dune 2 and even Dune Messiah at this point is a no-brainer. But of course, this is a business. And we can all talk about brilliant projects that have died on the vine. So I want to know when you remember or what you remember about the day that the studio officially told you, yes, we're going to roll on Dune 2.
First of all, I knew that the Legendary were really proud of the first movie, and they really believed that they really wanted to make the second one. It would have needed a catastrophe in order not to make it, but still, as you rightly said, it's a business, and I'm used to take nothing for granted until it's I remember being back home in Canada when we learned that finally it was greenlit, and it was just like at the moment where I was doing press, and I was like still in the process of we were finishing the screenplay. It was like technically there was no break between part 1 and part 2. I never left Arrakis. I mean, it's like I went from part 1 to part 2 directly. It was okay with me to do this way because it's not a sequel. It's the second part of a story. And we all felt at the time that it was important to go back on Arrakis as quickly as possible. But that meant that we came back in the desert, not with a lot of energy. It was like very inspired, a lot of enthusiasm. But let's say that, I had to fuel. My fuel was the actors. And really, they brought a tremendous amount of energy on set that I'm grateful to.
Wow. Denis, I'm going to ask this question carefully without any kind of spoilers for this, but I am continuously in awe of everything from the book that you were able to fit into these two movies. But anyone who's read the book does know that there are plot points that didn't make it to the big screen. So I was sort of curious, in your process of adapting the novel to script form, what was your North Star, your deciding factor in terms of what was so important that had to be on the big screen versus something that made you say, you know what, we're okay without that?
Well, first of all, it's a good question. First of all, the first decision that was made in part 1 and was that the adaptation will focus on the Bene Gesserit sisters. For the people who know the book, there's like the Spacing Guile, there's the Mantat, which are as important. But from what deeply inspired me about the book and what I feel was relevant with our time was to explore this idea of people using religion as a weapon, as a means of control. And as a tool of power. And So I focused this adaptation on the Bene Gesserit sisters. And the second thing, the most important thing to know is that knowing that Frank Herbert had been disappointed by the way people perceived the first book. When the book came out, he realized that people thought it was like a celebration of Paul Atreides. And his initial intention was to make a cautionary tale, a warning against messianic figures. And in order to correct the perception of the first book, he wrote a tiny book called Dune Messiah, that is a kind of epilogue almost of the first book, that make his initial intention more clear, that Paul is an anti-hero and that all that story is a tragedy. And so knowing that, let's say that I try to be more faithful to Frank Herbert's initial desires than to the book. I try to make sure that the movie will follow his initial dream.
Love that. Yeah, Denis, you are one of the few filmmakers in the world that reminds me why I love going to the movies. Like I sit down and I watch. I remember seeing Arrival and just being like, "Holy shit!" Like it just blew my mind. And then all the films that you've done, I've just found to be reminding me like that kid again. Why I love going to the movies. But the way you deal with cinematography is fascinating to me because Greg Fraser is one of the greatest DPs of all time, and we recently had him on our show as a guest, and he was wonderful to talk to. And I wanted to get your perspective of the narrative conversations you have with Greg when you're looking at the script and you look at the knife fight, for example, and you say, okay, I have this written out in the screenplay. What are your conversations like with Greg as you decide what shot you're going to use, what lens you're going to use, how you're going to edit it eventually? I'm just curious about those narrative conversations that you have with your director of photography.
But the thing is that first of all, there's always like there's multiple conversations, and the cinematographer is by far my closest partner on set. You know, it's like a brother in arms. So it will be through the whole preparation of the movie and the shoot a very intimate artistic relationship. I went toward Greg Fraser because the way he used natural light, I wanted to do in the Dune. I wanted to make sure that we will use as less artificial light as possible, that we lose the power of nature, that will be put up front in the cinematography. And Greg, of course, is a master at that. And we first I knew that I wanted to use IMAX as a main format. I knew that I wanted to be it's a very intimate story. At the end of the day, it's like we're talking about war, about the control of a planet, about the control of natural resources. But we are following a boy in the first movie that discover a culture, discover a new landscape. And in the second movie, a boy that takes action. And then so where I'm going is that we are like very close to Paul, and I wanted the movie to be as immersive. So that informed a lot the choice of lenses, to be in close proximity of Paul as much as possible until he became something that we are like, it's more difficult to identify with some messianic figures that can foresee the future. So there's a kind of distance that is operated with the lenses at that moment, and we fall more into Chinese perspective. There's like about I would say the light. It it created a lot of a puzzle because of my will to work with natural light and work in the real desert. It meant that we had to use only the sun as the main source of light. So it means that it creates chaos in the schedule. If you have two characters talking at the top of a sand dune at sunset, it means that the scene will necessarily be shot at the end of different days, and it's more difficult for the actors, and it becomes a real puzzle. If you have like just two actors, something, but if you have a battle sequence and then the location are not multiplied by 2 or by 3, but by the 12, because you have like different angles according to the sun, and so it was like I'm in awe of how my first AD was able to manage to get out us all alive from that, because it was really a puzzle for the actors, but Greg and I didn't want to make any compromises. We really and I love that. I love how his passion. I love how he is. No compromises.
And the knife fight, though, it was just unbelievable. Like how you guys decided those shots. It's incredible how you pulled that off.
Yeah. That is first of all, I was like grateful that and Austin and Timothée rehearsed for months and months in order to bring that to the screen. And we had like this idea that the fight will happen at the birth of a new day at the sunrise, and for that. Greg created a lighting system that I had never seen before. The biggest light system that he created, the sunlight, in a way that I'm still in awe. It was like by far I never saw that amount of. I don't know if he shared with you the pictures of the rig there, but it's quite impressive. Yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of.
No, he talked to us about the volume that he uses with Matt Reeves and how he never was able to convince you to employ the volume system.
But the thing is that it's a tool that can be very useful for specific things, but it's a tool that I felt was like absolutely the opposite of what I wanted to experience as a filmmaker. Greg developed the tool, and I know that it can be used in a very efficient way for specific things, but I didn't felt it was right for Dune.
100%. Denis,
and I'm not saying I will never use the volume. Right? It can be useful if you make a movie in space or something. It can be a very powerful tool. But if I want to make a movie in the desert, I will not sit in the studio on the sound stage with a picture of the desert. I want to go in the real one.
Hell yes, that's the right way, man. Hell yeah.
I want to talk briefly about Javier Bardem's first scene in Dune Part 1, because when he shows up, it's such a delightful reminder of, oh my God, that's right, Javier Bardem is in this also, because your ensemble is incredible, and he shows up a little bit later. Obviously, you give him so much more to do in this film, and it was really important to introduce him in Part 1. How did he surprise you in terms of what you were finally able to use out of him, especially going after that religious metaphor that you were just talking about?
Yeah, but the thing is that Stilgar is a very tragic character, is a character that needed to have a lot of we needed to connect to this character, to have empathy for him. We needed to feel a certain kind of connection, and Javier brought a lot of humanity and a beautiful levity in the character that you feel like in French we say attachant. You're moved. He's a kind of funny, like there's something there that makes his character very close to us, and I think that one thing that I was really pleased and surprised by was the complicity developed with Timothée Chalamet. What I'm saying, surprised, I'm not surprised about their complicity as human beings, but I'm just that kind of comic relief that where Timothée was more like the straight man and having reacting to Stilgar light madness was like we had a lot of fun, Joe Walker and I, to cut those scenes in the editing room. But I think that seeing that character that is like a humble leader that wants to be the best for his people, but is a strong believer in something, in that the faith will bring him toward fanatism, is something that I feel absolutely tragic and very moving.
Yeah, very true.
Denis, you have talked about, if you get the chance to make Dune Messiah, that will be your last Dune film. And fans of the book series often talk about the fact that after Messiah is where things get weird. And, a lot of people reference, without giving anything away, a human sandworm hybrid that becomes a major character in the series. I'm just sort of curious. Obviously, those are aspects that you're never going to direct, but how much thought you've given those Dune weird plot points that you're never going to bring to film? Is there any part of you that has thought about, in theory, how you would direct a human sandworm hybrid or any of the other weird aspects of Dune?
Listen, I when I commit to something, I commit 100% to what I'm doing in the present time, and I worked on both movies. It took me 6 years Of course, there was a year because of the pandemic that, but it's a lot of time, and if I do Dune Messiah, it's going to be another 2 or 3 years of my life. So it's just that. It's just for mental sanity. It's good to say, okay, I can do one more, and after that, I'll see. It's very a long time ago. A friend of mine, a producer, said to me, "Never commit to a project before you shoot something." Meaning that you are always your desires and your needs as a filmmaker are different after you shot something. And so after Dune Messiah, I'll see where I am. I'll see if I have still. The flame is still there to go back on Arrakis or not. I'll be surprised because there's many movies that I would love to do, and I feel that it's healthy. It would be healthy to finish Paul Atreides' arc, his story, and that Dune Messiah is really a book that I adore. But after that, it's true that it's getting Frank went out there, and it's true that it would be challenging to bring that to the screen. I didn't put any thought in that. Honestly, it's one movie at a time.
Denis, one of the things I find interesting about Paul's journey, especially in the first film, and I mentioned this to you when we were interviewing you for the TV Junket, when I got to see the movie in 143, and when you would punch to those dreams in 143, it was absolutely incredible just to watch that expand and the light and the way the screen would hit. But I found that interesting because I wanted to make a comparison to you as a filmmaker and the visions that you have for your movies before you make them. Because as he's having these visions and some of them are coming to life and he's actually living them out or they change in a way, I find that to be interesting as Paul kind of becomes close to those visions. So as a filmmaker, as you're in the production process or pre-production process or writing process, can you compare at all visions that you have of your movies and then kind of being on the set and it becoming how you actually realize? I'm just curious if that translates for you as a filmmaker.
It's an interesting question. In fact, it's an interesting perspective on my work because I would say the goal is to try to bring as much as possible what the vision I have in mind to reality. And sometimes there's some specific scenes in both movies that are very close to the early dream I had as a kid, or things when I wrote, and when it's the proximity of when it's very close to the visions, it's very rewarding and brings a lot of joy. And it's true that sometimes due to certain circumstances or the choices that I make as I'm directing, things go and deviate a little bit for the best, but still are different from the early vision. And it's always something that I have to digest for a long period of time. But the goal is to try to, the more I'm evolving as a filmmaker, the more I'm making movies, the more I get closer to the vision each time.
That's cool.
I think it's the same for everybody.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wanted to talk to you about something offbeat and just take a swing at this because currently Ryan Gosling, who you worked with on Blade Runner 2049, is up for an Oscar for a role that's so completely different than the part that you worked on, which is Ken in Barbie. And we're learning now that he's theoretically going to sing I'm Just Ken at the Oscars. And I think it reminds people about Ryan's range. And I wanted to, A, get your opinion if you've even seen the performance, and B, just talk about him as a performer based on what you know from experience. And then to see him take a 180 or 360 even and go in such a different direction like this.
I love when actors do that. I love when they are taking a risk. And honestly, Ryan is a comical genius. He has really, I don't remember Nice Guys, the bathroom scene.
Brilliant.
It's he has like an incredible sense of timing. And it's someone that actually, I remember when we were doing Blade Runner, which is a little bit far away from any comedy, but as we were rehearsing, I remember all he was very often making jokes or playing with Harrison Ford, and it was cracking me all the time. He's really someone that has an incredible sense of humor, and can has that kind of a bit like a Peter Sellers, like someone who knows how to create visual gags that will be cinematic and surprising. And it's like I'm not surprised that he did Ken. I was very excited by the idea of seeing him in plastic. It was. I think he did a fantastic job, and I think that it's. I think Greta did a fantastic job. I mean, if you had put in front of me a doll, a Barbie, and you had said to me, make a feature film out of this, I would have frozen. I mean, it's like it's what these guys did. It's really. I'm very in awe of what Greta was able to do with a plastic doll. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And Rodrigo Prieto, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Denis, I went and saw Dune Part 2 for a second time last night, not just because I wanted to see it again, but I wanted to bring my girlfriend, because what I always often say is my love language with her is showing her movies that I care deeply about, that I love. That being said, I have never brought myself to show her Arrival or Prisoners, because she has an 8-year-old daughter and she can't really handle films that show harm to children. And I was just wondering about that. That's a long, fancy way of asking about the emotional impact that your films have on people. And do you have people in your own life that you can't show some of your own movies to because of the impact that they have on them?
Man, it took a while before I showed some of my movies to my kids. Now they are grown ups, but of course, I am aware that there's a lot of movies that I've made that are rated R and for violence or very serious psychological matter. I love movies that are dealing with difficult topics, and I'm aware that. It was. I will answer this. Making Dune, it was a way for me to go back and let's say work in a zone that I had never worked before, which is trying to make movies for a younger audience. Not sacrificing this. I'm talking about violence. Trying to make a movie for adult, but that could be seen by a younger audience, making sure that the violence and the images will be cinematic and impressive, but not too much for a young public. And that, for me, it was an exercise that was very stimulating.
Interesting.
I still hear the whistle from Prisoners. I still hear it literally echoes in my head. I wanted to ask you this because I love the friendship that you and Christopher Nolan have. And I saw that screening that you both did together when you were both doing the interview, and Christopher Nolan has talked very, very highly of Dune Part 2. And it's been amazing just to watch your friendship, because you're two of the greatest filmmakers of our time. I'm just curious, when each of you finishes a movie at this point in your friendship, how you show each other your films. Like when he finished Oppenheimer and you finished Dune, do you sit to watch them together at all?
I would say this. First of all, I would be careful. I'm developing a friendship with Chris. I'm not among his great friends. He knows a lot of people, so I would not want to take a position that it's not mine. But yes, it's true that we are becoming friends, and it's true that Chris showed me Oppenheimer. He was like seeing one of the first, I think, IMAX print, and he brought a couple of friends, and I was among them, and it was like a privilege for me to watch Oppenheimer before everybody else, and I did the same with once Part 2 was finished. I showed him the movie before everybody, but it's the beginning of a friendship. I will say my admiration for this filmmaker is I think I publicly said how much I admire him. He's someone that operates in a range, in a stratosphere somewhere above everybody. So it's a way to always have those very tricky subject matter that he can bring in an incredible cinematic way. For me, every of each of his movies a cinematic lesson, and I'm one of his big fans, of course.
We feel that about you, though. Like, do you know that people feel that about your movies, right? You know, there's audiences who feel the way you do about Christopher Nolan. Like, that's how people feel about when they see Dune and your films. Is that crazy to you? Like, is that amazing to you?
The thing, Kevin, is that the problem is that when you're a filmmaker, you know where you know where you succeeded and you know where you failed, and you were always in a relationship with what you need to improve. That's what give you fuel to make another movie, to go back behind the camera. One of the reasons is that you know that you can do better. Although I'd say it's a deep. I don't. No comment.
Fair enough.
We'll say it for you. Yes. We got you. Yeah.
All right. I would like you to open up a little bit more about your collaboration with another genius, and that's Hans Zimmer, and putting his music to your visuals. Having had it on the first film, expanding on a lot of the themes that go into the second film. Kevin asks this a lot. I think it's always a great question. What is it like when you see your imagery finally put to the music that Hans comes up with for something like Dune Part 2?
I never use music in a way. I do use music in both Dune movies. Before, I was trying to use more music as sparsely as possible, as less as possible. Music is very powerful, and it absolutely change your perception of an image, and it brings a tremendous amount of energy. And I'm always trying to keep music as a last resort or something. But for Dune, because of the nature of the book and the complexity of the book, I felt that it was important to work with a composer that will help me to bring all the current or that help me with the themes and help me to create a sensation of wonder, and also the idea of sacred, the idea that the religious feeling of the movie will be conveyed by the music, and it's because it's those are things are not palpable, and to elevate them and make them more powerful, and as that they just don't just become ideas, but powerful emotions on screen. And Hans was, of course, he's a massive fan of the book, and he's the first artist I brought in, and he. What he did for the first movie, I was in awe. But when we came back, I said to him that I was wishing to the music to be in the same DNA, the same aesthetic, but that we should bring a lot of new score, and almost like a new soundtrack, and he went for it, and specifically because there was we were going deeper into the Harkonnen culture. Deeper into the Fremen culture, there was something that was essential for me, was a theme that will be about the relationship between Paul and Shani, and what Shani brings to Paul, and the perspectives she brings to Paul regarding her own planet. And Hans did a tremendous, and it's by far my favorite score ever. It's a score that I will say, in Dune Part 1 and Part 2, the music is very important, and very important. And I use the word genius very, I try to avoid to use that word as much as possible, but Hans Zimmer definitely has some genius. Definitely.
Yes.
He's
yes, 100%.
Someone that,
no question.
Yeah, he's a force. It's very a force.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Denis, we'll get you out of here on this one because we know you have a heart out. You have such an incredible ensemble cast in both Part 1 and Part 2 that unfortunately that means that obviously there were a lot of great actors we got to spend time with in Part 1 that are not in Part 2. I am going to ask you a question without any context to it, and you interpret it however you want to, but it is very much meant to be a loaded question. When was the last time you talked to Jason Momoa?
Funny enough, I talk with Jason very often. He's a friend of mine, and I'm still waiting for the bottle of vodka that he was supposed to send me at Christmas. But No, Jason and I, we there was like a beautiful friendship that came out of part one, and Jason is very excited about the prospect of going back on Arrakis, and yeah, it's but that is a spoiler, but the book has been released since 55 years or 60 years, so I mean it's.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Do you ride motorcycles with Batista, with Momoa and Brolin? Have they gotten you on a motorcycle yet?
No. But if you speak to Josh Brolin about Jason, and they have a lot of great stories. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you young pup is one of the best lines in the movie.
Yes.
Congratulations to you. We really want to say thank you for coming on our show. It means so much to us. And this show was designed for filmmakers to come on and talk about their work and their process. And our listeners just love hearing that process. So thank you so much for being a part of our show. And for the 300th episode, it's really an honor to have you.
Yeah, it was an honor for me to be with you, John Chalamet, for this number of episodes. And yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Take care.
We need to thank our amazing friends at Warner Brothers who pushed very hard to get Denis Villeneuve
who
on
always
our
push
show.
on our behalf.
They really do. And this one in particular, just to give some quick backsight, if you follow us at all, you know that the Dune junket happened a long time. It was like a month ago. And then Denis has been on a global press tour since then. And we couldn't make it work at the junket when we were all together. And we've just been trying to find a pocket, and Warner Brothers was really fantastic in helping us secure that time with Denis, who is very, very much in demand for a film that I think is going to be a topic of conversation for the year, to be honest with you. I mean, I see no scenario where this is not contending in Best Picture and countless other Oscar categories. So really, really thrilled to have him on. We're going to do a quick spoiler-free review of Dune. We're going to have plenty of time over the course of the next few weeks to discuss it in depth. Obviously, we want everybody to have a chance to see it before we start to dissect it. And I want to kick off because I'm super jealous of Jake because he's been able to see it twice. And I am dying to see it a second time because my gut reaction coming out of it, and by no means do I want to say that this is a slight on the film in any way, shape, or form, is that if I were to compare the two, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, I preferred the first one, which to me just felt a little bit more streamlined and a little more focused because there's so much going on in Part 2. I have a feeling that opinion is going to change after a second viewing. And Jake, one of the things you were even saying to me after seeing it a second time is that you caught a lot more stuff that maybe you didn't absorb the first time through. It's a lot of movie. It's
a lot of movie. And also, too, you're so overwhelmed with so much that's going on because, it's an accurate comparison when they talk about, part one being the appetizer and part two being the entree. That is 100% accurate. But also, too, I would like to point out that the first time we often all see movies, we're also seeing them through the context of interview preparation. So it's not to say that we can't enjoy these things because we obviously do, but there's a huge part of my mind that is sort of separated and watching the film through the prism of, okay, what did that moment, how could that yield a question? So one of the main reasons I really do love to go back and see a movie a second time, particularly a movie I love as much as this one, is to just be able to kick back and enjoy it without any other distractions of work or thought. I can just sort of, fully immerse myself as opposed to 75% of the way.
That one in particular too, because we knew we were getting the full cast. And you want that one to go well. That's 100%. One of the ones that you circle where you're putting extra weight behind it.
There was no wasted. I think we got 6 different interview rooms and every room was usable. And quite frankly, not to be, dismissive of other junkets. Sometimes you do a junket and if there's 5 or 6 rooms, sometimes you look at it and go, I'm probably going to use that one, and that one. And the other 3, I'm probably not ever going to. All the rooms of Dune are usable A-listers that you kind of needed to score at all 6 at bats.
And here's my comparison between the two that I think will let people know what they're in store for if they haven't seen Dune Part 2 yet. To me, it felt a little bit like Dune was a trial balloon that Denis sent out there to almost say to the audience, like, are you willing to follow me down this path? How heavy sci-fi can I go, right? Because he's coming off of Blade Runner 2049, which we all love, but the audiences didn't necessarily tune in for. And because the first Dune was so well received, I feel like he went heavier into the science fiction in Dune Part 2, which is great. You know, I really appreciate that, but it's so much more of a meal to chew on. There are huge political and religious allegories that I felt like I just skimmed the surface of, that I know all the material is there. I just can't wait for more time to dig into it. So to me, if the first one is in my mind a perfect 5 out of 5, this one is like a 4.85 that has the ability to go up to a 5 once I get a chance to sort of see it again a second time. Kev, where are you at with it?
I'm with you 100%. I've only seen the film once, and I don't know. For me, when I watch films, I there's two things that are happening in my mind, like kind of Jake was saying, but I can, at least in my head, when I'm watching the film, I'm able to separate the interview and the critical review of the film in that moment. So like my particular viewing of that film was critical, but obviously I was thinking about the interviews as well. So I understand what Jake is saying about like the secondary viewing and kind of like not having to worry about the questions you're asking or thinking about things like that. So for me, I think I prefer the first film because I found the first film to be a bit more confident in its storytelling. Now, again, the second movie is there's a lot going on. I have not read the books. There were moments where things happened that book readers will recognize right away that maybe a viewer who has not read the book will take a second or two. Like, it's almost like the idea of like having to read the book and go to the glossary section when you're reading it for Dune. You don't have the ability to do that during a movie. You can't check the glossary section of a film. So there was a lot of moments that I felt did go over my head. That doesn't mean the film is critically lesser than. I just think the material is so dense that there's so much to take in. Now, I will say this. I rewatched the first Dune a couple days before seeing the new one because I wanted to have kind of a to B concept of how that played out. What I love about the first movie so much that I felt was there was like, to me, the Duncan Idaho character that Jason Momoa plays in the first one, there's such a heart to that character and that relationship between him and Paul. I think the Brolin character this time was that character a little bit in the first one, but is now kind of taken over that like, you know, mentorship, that like protection aspect of things. I also really missed Oscar Isaac. I think there's
exactly. You nailed both. I missed both of those characters.
Dude, my favorite scene in the entire Dune franchise that I've seen so far is when Paul and his father are walking by the water over the cliffs, and they're just having a conversation about how Paul doesn't think that, you know, what if I'm not the one, or what if I'm not what we need for the family? And there's a way that Oscar plays that scene that is just brilliant. I also think Oscar's death scene in the first one is one of the most remarkable and memorable death scenes I've seen in a film. The way that was shot, the way he's leaning back, the bite of the thing. The reason why I'm so focused on Dune 1 is because I'm so heavily remembering those scenes. Those scenes were huge for me. There are moments in Dune 2 that I will have equal feelings for. Like, there's a great scene with Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet, which is the knife fight, which you've seen in the trailers, not spoiling anything. I thought the Javier Bardem character in the second one, I thought the comic relief was a little too much for me. But again, I need to see it a second time so I can kind of like consume it all. I also thought Christopher Walken took me out of the movie a little bit. I just think that Walken is such a presence, and he's so famous, and his voice is so big, and he's so Christopher Walken that I was reminded that I was watching Christopher Walken, I guess is what I would like to say. Like, when I watch Pulp Fiction, because of like the satirical, like crazy nature of that film. Satirical is maybe the wrong word, but that movie just has a tone to it where I just buy into the wacky character that he's playing. It's Christopher Walken, but it's not Christopher Walken kind of thing. Him as the Emperor, I would like to have seen a no name or a lesser name in that role, because like Stellan Skarsgård is so perfect for the Baron because he's not that famous and he can disappear, and obviously he has all that makeup and prosthetics on, so it's a little different than the Walken situation.
It's fascinating just because with Dave Bautista, when he shows up in Blade Runner, I have a really hard time not thinking like, oh, there's Dave Bautista. Yeah. But when Bautista is in Dune, he disappears into the Harkonnen makeup completely. Yeah, it's weird. I'm with you on that.
I will disagree, though. I think the opening of Blade Runner, the little tiny glasses that he puts on in that scene, I just love that character so much. I want to get to the positives, because the reason I started with more on the negative side is because there's so much to say about this movie on a positive note that I just wanted to get the little things out of the way. Because I'm with Sean. I'm like a 4.85 out of 5, and then the first one's a 5 out of 5 for me. On the positive note, and then we'll get to Jake, Greg Fraser's cinematography. This is... Every single shot in this film is incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like that on this scale that looks like this. Zimmer's score is brilliant. Chalamet leads this film, but I got to give a credit to Zendaya. Zendaya's performance is brilliant. Like, she's really an emotional aspect of this film, and I didn't know where this character was going, so this is all new to me, and I was blown away by that. Austin Butler's performance is incredible. The cinematography,
him get all the recognition that he's been getting.
Me too. And the black and white aspect of the cinematography and everything. Florence Pugh's great. There is so much greatness in this film, and I'm just happy that it exists. It's an exhilarating film. It's a dense film. It's a physical film. I do recommend seeing it in IMAX. I will say this for our listeners out there who are all around the country or the world. There is 2 different IMAX versions of this film. If you go to your standard AMC, you'll get the 190, but if you could find the 143, which is where, like I talk about with Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer, New York particularly, AMC Lincoln Square, LA, Universal City Walk, you're going to get a jump from the 190 to the 143, and it's supposed to be ridiculously incredible. And they struck some 70 millimeter IMAX prints for this. So listen, this is a great movie. Yeah. It's fantastic. I still prefer 1, but this is only on 1 viewing. So at the moment, that's where I'm at. I just miss Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa. Those characters to me had a heart and a thread that I felt wasn't as prominent here. But Brolin's character really kind of brings that home, and Brolin is incredible. "You young pup" is my favorite line in the whole film. It's great.
Interesting. So Jake, you have had the benefit of then seeing it the second time. Did it change a good deal for you?
All it did was solidify how I already felt, which whenever we walked out of the first screening seat a month ago, to me, I prefer part 2 over part 1. To me, part 2 is, as someone who read the book, this part of the story, the themes that are presented here, that's what Dune is. And you're talking to someone who, and I think Kevin did as well. And I think it was pretty high on Sean's. Dune Part 1 was number 1 on my top 10 list that year. So, we're at this point, we're all splitting hairs, but I mean, that was my number 1. And it was what I felt was the building blocks.
Would you say the difference between the 2 is like a grain of spice?
There's sand.
It's just a couple of, just everything, I was hoping for more of a spicy take from Kevin. But I mean, everything about this, there was a moment very early in of the film, and we're talking maybe 60 seconds into the movie, that is a huge wide shot, almost Lawrence of Arabia like, that features a collection of characters just floating up a mountainside. And I just looked at Sean and just went, my God. Like this is one of those moments where, we see movies every single day, and we're lucky to have the sort of theatrical experiences that we've had. But that is I remember where I was when I saw The Dark Knight for the first time, and I will forever remember my Dune Part 2 theatrical experience. It was just such an immersive, tangible experience. Him shooting on location, very much like George Lucas shooting in Tunisia for Episode 4 for the original Star Wars. There is a timelessness richness that comes with the way he shot this movie. This movie will be as incredible to us in 30 years as it was seeing it in 2024. Like, this movie will not age. In fact, it will probably only get better. And what I love most about this movie is how complicated it is. You know, that we talk a lot about the fact that Dune was one of the inspirations for George Lucas to sit down and put pen to paper and write Star Wars. But Star Wars dove very heavily into archetypes. You know, the very black and white. You know, everything good and evil. Everything was quantified. Everything had a place. And Dune is a lot more of a gray area. You know, this for what is such a big, massive blockbuster, there aren't a lot of easy answers. And it's, you know, these characters are complicated and very few of them really sit on one side of good or evil. And I just think in a day and age where so many movies are spoon feeding us plot points and are or sometimes glorified trailers for the next movie propped up in front of a green screen or a blue screen shot in Atlanta. To have a
extremely specific.
Look, I'm just throwing out generics.
Rhymes with Binewood Studios.
To be given, this incredibly complicated, layered, unbelievably beautifully shot blockbuster. I mean, it's everything that I wanted Dune to be. You know, when Dune wrapped up, when Dune Part 1 wrapped up, I remember thinking, okay, like, that was unbelievable. I'm in awe. Like, I bow and kiss the ring of Denis Villeneuve. But Dune Part 2 is what I'm waiting for. Dune Part 2 is why I love Dune. And for me, that this movie delivered everything that I needed. It stuck the landing. I needed it to stick the landing. You know, it's when you're on a plane, it's great when the takeoff goes well, but I need you to land that plane safely.
But now, isn't Dune Messiah sticking the landing? Does Messiah have to conclude it, or?
Well, you know, and we were talking about this earlier. Gabe, do you want to get? He talked, and Denis talked about it in the interview as well. Dune. I'm going to be honest. I don't know as much about Dune Messiah, but Dune Messiah came out of necessity for people not truly understanding that, the complications that come with Paul Atreides, without getting too much into it. A lot of people draw parallels between Paul Atreides and Luke Skywalker when that's not accurate. I think it's far more accurate to compare him to an Anakin Skywalker.
I haven't read Dune Messiah. I want to now. I never really felt inspired to, just because I loved Dune, and then I know that it gets kind of weird after that, and I kind of never went back. But yes, he mentions in the interview about why Messiah was written, and I haven't seen this movie yet. I didn't get to see it early, and so hopefully in the coming weeks, I'm seeing it Thursday. I'm seeing it with the general public.
You will have seen it by the time people are watching this.
Yes, but I can't tell you now what I think of it, or sort of have that information. But
hasn't happened
I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see how much, because as he mentioned, he has Messiah in his mind as far as like what he was trying to say with the book, and it sounds like that's what the stripping down and sort of his point of focus was, really trying to nail home that this is a cautionary tale, not an inspiring tale of a hero or whatever, the Luke Skywalker sort of comparison that people were making. So I think if he did that, to your point, Sean, then I'm curious how much, when I get to see it, how much Messiah needs to exist, if that's all Messiah gives us. But I don't have enough information to say.
One thing I also want to say, one of the things I loved about the first Dune, I think what's happening in part 2 is the assumption that you're already in the world, right? So
sure.
I think what I loved about the first one was the wonderment and the exploration. Like when they go up in the ornithopter with like Oscar Isaac and everybody, and they're going to see the worm for the first time, and it's like taking down that spice vehicle or whatever that is. I'm sorry, forgive my
harvester.
Ignorance.
I think it's like a spice harvester.
Yeah. But that whole sequence is so freaking intense. Do you guys also remember the scene when Ornithopter with Rebecca Ferguson and Timothy and the engine shut off? Sure. They have to like fly themselves in. Like there are like, I just, those are scenes that stick out to me. And again, I need to see the second one again, because like it was the exploration of the world in the first one that really lit me up. Like it was funny.
Sorry. Finish your point.
Well, no, that was like one of the things I just kept thinking about was like, I don't know. I loved exploring the world in that first one, and I think that's the only thing I'm kind of missing from the new one is like the exploration of it.
That reminds me. I think it's almost like a taste thing. I haven't seen this movie, but the way you guys are describing it reminds me very much of I'm showing my partner Game of Thrones for the first time right now. Yeah, and we're just got to season 3, and it reminds me of television, serialized television, where we watched the first 2 seasons, and I said, okay. Now you know the world of Game of Thrones.
Right.
Everything beyond this is getting to live in it and just building on what happened. Right. And because you have the context, they go to these crazy places and it gets even better and even better. And it sounds like that's a taste thing of, do you prefer to be in that early bit where you're exploring and everything's new versus what they're able to achieve once you're saturated in that world? And like, to your point, 4.8 versus 5.
And also, too, part 1 hopped around a lot more. Part 1, they start on Caladan and then they go to, they go to the planet where the Emperor's troops are. And then they go, to the Baron's planet there. Part 2 is very much on Dune. Now, it's not to say they don't pop over to other places. They do, but part 1 is the majority. More, it earns its title of Dune in part 2.
Right. I also, a lot of the, again, going back to the exploration point, I also just liked exploring the Baron in the first one. Just the different disgusting things he did, like the eating at the end of the table and like I don't know, there was just stuff about that. And what's interesting is, and to Gabe's point, Dune Part 2 is essentially you're living in the world they set up, which is great. And I think what carries Dune 2 so well are the characters and the performances. But the action scenes in this one are some of the most insanely epic things you will ever see on the big screen. And if you get a chance to go to the full 143 and that stuff opens up during those sandworm scenes and all that stuff. I mean, I got to bring this up. Watching Chalamet do the ride the worm is one of the most insane sequences I've seen in cinema. Like the way that was captured, because they shoot it in a way where you're almost like docu-style with him as he's doing everything he's doing, rather than pulling out above and just kind of giving like a cool like POV shot down. They do cut out and show some of that stuff, and you eventually see him riding it. But the way Greg Fraser and the way Denis developed that, like where you're kind of like, you're almost having to look through the sand. You know what I mean? Like you're like, as an audience member, like the sand is rushing at you so much in the sound design. And you're kind of like, where is he? Where is he? And that's what it would look like, because Timothy's character is so small compared to the size of this worm. And so, listen, there are shots in this film that are so jaw-dropping that it's hard to even say in words what it is. I can't wait to see it again. And I'm with Sean. I'm curious how my second viewing will be once I've kind of just let everything saturate for a bit. I would love to see it back to back. I would love to see the full thing. Like to Gabe's point, if I could sit in the exploration and then enter the second chapter just in one sitting, like the whole bloody affair. Like I said,
like binging TV.
Yeah, you just get like the whole bloody affair or something like that. It'd be cool as hell.
I was wondering earlier, is this going to be our next debate of like, is it 2 movies or 1 movie?
Well, this is 2 movies.
I lean more toward 2 movies on this one.
He shot 2 movies.
Yeah, he shot 2 movies.
This is 2 movies.
This is 2 movies.
It's called
Dune he's
Part
referring
2.
to it as a trilogy, and the only reason that works... The only way that works is if it's part 1 and 2.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, because we're curious. And it's funny, like Jake said, we're splitting hairs. Sean and I are at a 4.8. Jake's at a 5. I'm assuming. So it's
an amazing movie.
We're like right there. It's like,
I hate to be that guy already. It's March 1st, and I know there's a degree of like, okay, calm the fuck down, because these Oscars haven't even happened. But like, we've got to start talking about this seriously in terms of like. Fraser for cinematography, Zimmer for score, production design, sound. I mean, it's
Jake. You're all awards prognosticators, but I'd say you have the most like in-depth history of the awards and like sense for like that. Yeah. So I want to ask you specifically: does the Messiah conversation set this up for a sort of Lord of the Rings run? Like is it to the detriment of part 2?
I don't know. That's a good point, because everyone keeps waiting to award.
I mean, Dune won, the first Dune won a lot as well. But do you think that would hurt its chance if everyone's like, oh, it's going to be a trilogy and they're going to finish it?
The only thing I can think of is, remember guys, when we were doing our draft for this year and we were sort of complaining at like, look, there are always great movies that fly below our radar that maybe we aren't even aware aware are going to exist for the next 8 months. But in drafting this year, I was kind of taken aback at how few like prestige pictures we were getting from some of our big directors. So I really think in terms of its Oscar chances, one of the best things that could happen to it is that we didn't get that Dune Part 2 versus Oppenheimer showdown.
Sure.
And so the fact that Dune Part 2 was pushed to a year that, aside from what could be some fun blockbusters, might be a little bit on the weaker side, especially coming off of a year that I would say is one of the best movie years we've had since 2007. I thought 2023 was just a unbelievable year for movies. So it's hard to say. It's also all just about the competition too. So we'll see what happens.
While you guys were giving your takes on Dune Part 2, I went back and looked to see where it fell on my top 10 of 2021.
Was it 4?
This is fairly entertaining.
Oh, no.
It landed at number 6 for me.
What? What was above it?
Well, that's what I'm going to read to you right now.
No.
Let's go ahead and do that.
I think it was number 1 for me, right? I think it was.
I thought it was Kevin's number 1. That was my number 1 as well.
I'm pretty sure.
6. I went with 6.
Let's just get what are the 5 above it? Let's just.
Oh.
Number 5, Coda, which won Best Picture that
Okay.
year.
I'm not okay with that. I love Coda. I love Coda, but it's not.
But it's not an egregious pick. It's a great movie.
It's a good pick.
It's not Madam Web.
All right, get ready.
Coda is great. Coda's great.
Number 4, The Father, Anthony Hopkins.
Great movie.
Great movie.
Terrific movie.
Probably one of the. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please. I need your validation here.
That movie brought a level of immersion to a subject that I never I'd never understood before. And I thought Hopkins was brilliant. That's a great film. Great.
Number
film.
3 is where we start to figure out how the awards race affects our opinions, because at number 3 I have Kenneth Branagh's Belfast.
You
did love that
You
movie.
Loved Belfast when it came. I was the last one in Roblin to see that, and it's on my top 10. I think it's like number 6 or 7 on my top 10 for that year. But Sean, I remember you being enamored. We have to remember they're snapshots of a moment.
Yeah,
and they are. Okay, so 2 and 1, I'm going to argue would still be above Dune any year. 2, I have Tick Tick Boom, which is phenomenal.
That. Yeah, you did love that.
And number 1 is Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Right.
So maybe not terrible, but that's how Dune ends up at 6. There you go.
It's not a bad list. I mean,
it's a good year.
That sounds like a correct
list, but it's not a bad list.
All right, let's throw it to a break and then celebrate ourselves on the other side. And we are back. All right, so we're going to take a few minutes to celebrate the milestone that is episode 300. And it's really funny. Early on, when we first started this show.
What did it start at, Sean?
Well, it was an award show to start off as.
News to me.
I used to rapidly check the reviews that were posted to places like Apple Podcasts and things like that. Or if people were nice enough to write us a review. And I stopped over time paying attention to them. But as we approached 300, I wanted to go back over and look over some of the lists. And I realized we had some new ones written in there.
No, I've seen some of the new ones.
Have you seen some of the new ones? And one guy in particular was like, enough is enough or something like that. And he's like,
that was Kevin's mom.
He's like, I'm a long time listener and I just can't listen to you three talk about how every interview that you've done is the greatest in the world and every movie that you've seen is amazing. And yeah, so
God
that guy punched
people
out.
Who do a movie podcast love movies.
So if you don't want to hear us gush like that guy, you could probably
I hope he's still
out.
here. I hope he's still here. And he's like, you know what? I had a bad day. He writes back in. He's like, I had a bad day. I'm still here. I still hang out.
It's Denis.
I guarantee that dude's here. He hate listening to this on a weekly basis.
Oh, hey, I'll take hate engagement, you know.
We are gonna
hate engagement.
Google doesn't know the
difference. Jakey, why don't you so quick origin story of the Roblin podcast.
Quick.
We were tasked with coming up with podcast ideas at Cinema Blend, and I came up with the idea of a couple of movie friends turning on the microphones and just BSing about movies with no real structure whatsoever. And the first person that I approached was Jake Hamilton. Ran into Jake in Orlando at Star Wars Celebration. and asked him if he would be interested in that. A week later, ran into Kevin at a junket in New York. Kevin was getting Spielberg for, I believe it was The Post, and I remember, and pitched him on the idea as well too. Kev talks a lot about how he still has the email. Jakey, give me your overall take of where we were then to where you think we are now.
Yeah, well, I remember being in a very specific, unique position in life that I don't know if people realize happened to me, but I started doing junkets whenever I was a kid in Houston. And then whenever I got offered this job, my first full-time job ever, to work in news in Chicago, one of the stipulations by the guy who was bringing me here was like, hey man, like you've been doing junkets for a long time. Like when I bring you here, I'm not really going to need you to do those anymore. So you kind of have to accept the fact that like you're going to be doing other things. And at that time I'd been talking to Kevin. Kevin and I had been having some long talks about, I was starting to feel like, maybe I've gotten everyone I needed to get. Little did I know all the people I hadn't gotten yet. But that's a long way of saying that whenever I moved to Chicago, there was about a 4-year period where I wasn't doing junkets anymore, and which meant I wasn't doing the interviews. I wasn't seeing Sean and Kevin and the other people like I was, and I'd kind of started building this new life in Chicago that was kind of away from this world in a lot of ways. I was a little bit more in the world of journalism and hadn't really dipped my toe back into that. In fact, whenever I ran into Sean at Star Wars Celebration, I was there as a fan. I was there on a trip with my buddies, and we made a weekend out of it. And it was just by pure happenstance that I ran into someone from Disney that was like, what are you waiting in line for with everybody else? You should be, and you and your buddies here, take these press passes, get better seats. And only because of that one run-in did I then bump into Sean, who is in the press section. You think about it, Sean, I never would have run into you had it not been a friend of ours from Disney who I bumped into. I'm a big believer of like the butterfly effect, how one little thing can, end up sort of circling this chaos theory, as Jeff Goldblum calls it. Big Kutcher. Yeah, exactly. And so for me, the initial appeal, we often talk about, creating this show. And yes, I know the joke is started as an awards podcast, but it was never with the dream of doing these interviews. It was never, with aspirations of ending up in Quentin Tarantino's house. For me, one of the biggest thing to hope for. Yeah, exactly. The appeal was always, I get to reconnect with some friends that I haven't connected with in a long time. I haven't really gotten to see these guys. I miss these guys. I miss that world. And, for 4 years out of almost 20 years of doing junkets doesn't sound like a long time to step away from it. But whenever you think that that's it, whenever you think that that's, obviously I ended up getting a new boss who found value in entertainment coverage, who wanted me to get back into it, and the rest is history. But for me, the value has always been logging on every week and connecting with you guys and shooting the shit and talking about movies and having sort of these conversations. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, 300 episodes later, and all the milestones that you named, Sean, and the moments of Tom Hanks talking with us about Road to Perdition and the times where Hans Zimmer called us his show friends and my dogs, how many times my dogs interrupted us in the background. Nothing's changed. For me, the appeal is still logging on and shooting the shit with you guys. Like the way I look at it is if something happened and a blanket fell over the world of junkets and they said, hey, we're no longer going to include podcast, and hey guys, it was a good run, but like Real Blend can't do interviews anymore, I'd go, all right, well, we're back to the beginning. But it wouldn't stop the reason that I log on to this show every single day. So that's kind of what makes me happy, is that the shiny, flashy side of this has always been a bonus. But the core reason of why I agreed to do this in the first place is the exact same reason that 6 years and 300 episodes later, I still hit log on every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, 95% of what we do is the actual show of just us talking about movies. Like the interviews they're a big part of like how we tease our show, and obviously getting these bigger names is brings more people over to us. And that's the whole, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, you know, if you book a big name on your show, people who are fans of that person will come to your show and hopefully listen and want to stay and continue listening. And I think we were doing our Denis Villeneuve interview today, and it, like as I was saying this to him, it just made me so proud. I was like, we created this show for people to listen to how you work, how you make movies. That's the whole reason we did this. I mean, initially the awards aspect of it, of course,
but still talk in that manner,
right?
Sure,
But but just at least giving insight to the process. And I said this before on the show, but when I first started in any type of entertainment, I was in radio. And I had a radio show on CBS radios Friday nights from 7 to 10. And then it was on Sundays sometimes as well. And the whole show was dedicated to filmmakers, composers, director of photographies, directors. I had Zimmer on for Inception. I had Wally Pfister on for Inception. You know, it was like this. That was the show that I wanted, but I was by myself. So there was really no like, I mean, a buddy of mine would come in and help, and sometimes he would co-host with me, but overall it was me. And I never really kind of had for me to celebrate like these big moments or just to kind of have a conversation about movies with my buddies. But also what's special about what we do is that Sean, Jake, and I, and Gabe, we all do the same thing for a living, essentially. And what I mean by that is like there's a certain understanding that comes with what we do for a living. It's a very weird job if you actually think about what we actually do. It's very strange. Like to be, you know, to fly to a different country or a different part of the world to sit down with these filmmakers. I remember my mom, when I first started doing this for years, she's like, why aren't you worried about getting paid? I'm like, Mom, I would pay thousands of dollars just to sit in a room with Steven Spielberg.
And honestly, and a lot of people just do it, not Spielberg,
just
but like think of like these conventions, people that pay hundreds of dollars to have a 4-second moment to get a picture with these people, and we get conversations.
Right. And that's what I was trying, like today when we were talking to Denis, like it's so beautifully fitting that he was our guest for 300 because that's the show. That's the show right there. It's having a filmmaker come on here and give insight. But again, the show is also us and our collective ideas of what we think of movies. We all bring different things to the table. What's weird about our show, and you guys know this, we'll be in the middle of an interview and then we just click. There's just a connection of a wave that you can't teach to anybody. It's hard to make an explanation. Like when we're sitting down with Tom Hanks for Elvis, and we're all just vibing, and there's no like I'm stepping on his toes or Jake stepping on mine or Sean, whatever. We're all in it, and it's a moving machine, and there's just pieces that like are just going together, and you can't explain it, like because we're all coming at it from different perspectives. Sean's from a father perspective. We all have different perspectives on how we view movies. Yep. For some reason, it just works, and like we'll walk out of an interview that we just did and go. Like, do you guys remember the moment we left Nolan for Oppenheimer? Do you remember that feeling that we had? Yeah. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah. For me, it was our first Tarantino.
The Tarantino
that was wild.
Yeah. And the Nolan, was wild. Yeah, those are very special moments. So I just got to say, like, this was a show that I always dreamed of doing. But it's far exceeded the dreams that I had because I get to do it with people who are incredible at their jobs, at the highest level of their jobs, professional, ask amazing questions. We all care. Every one of us cares. That's the whole thing. We all give a shit. That's really what it comes down to. And that's why we found each other, and that's why it works.
Agreed. That's a huge part of what I wanted to get into here is just that what people don't understand is that Kevin and Jake don't work for Cinema Blend. So for the most part, they're doing this volunteer. Essentially. Essentially, like they're taking time out of their schedules and have for 300 episodes
I wouldn't change
put
any of it.
the show together, and they're not employees, and people don't understand like a lot of the hurdles that we had to jump through to make that even happen from a perspective.
Stories I don't think we can put on air, but so many stories.
I forgot about all the logistics of, without getting into it, but there's
just red tape, just a lot of red tape.
Red tape. That's a good way of putting it.
I should read Sean's original email, just like the first sentences of it.
But I also want to highlight that the amount of work that Gabe does for the show.
Oh my God. It cannot be understated how much work Sean or Kevin does behind this, or Jesus, Gabe does behind the scenes.
Like people
doesn't even know my name. 300
episodes,
he doesn't even know my name.
When I started this conversation by saying that like the concept of the show was let's just throw on the microphones and have three friends talk about movies, like that show would last a month at best. And I wouldn't even figure out how to get it into people's ears. So I can't not single out like Gabe for the wrangling. And I mean, I'm talking about going back to like when we talk about remembering things from the show, like I remember we were just talking about this recently at Argyle, like Jake and I walking around to electronic shops in London to get a microphone because I didn't bring a snowball with me, you know, not having headphones with us to record, you know, just equipment. The day of the Tarantino, the New York Tarantino.
Dude, I don't know if people remember this. We went to a Guitar Center to get microphones, and the guy who was selling it to us, didn't he perform on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack or something? It was like
something like that.
It was something. Yeah. And I'm so glad you shouted out Gabe, because like every single thing you hear and see on this show, like Gabe is so like, guys, check your mics, check your headphones. Is everything on? Is everything working? And like we're all just oblivious to all this crap that he's talking about. And like, and he's 100% right. Every single time we're like, dude, like I'm like, Gabe, back off. But actually, no, you're not. You're wrong. You're right 100%.
Most of the time, if I'm asking you for something, it's because it already went wrong.
Right.
So exactly.
I was cutting the show too.
It's like, a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I'm grateful that
4 individual people in 4 cities are 4 different schedules is very difficult. Look, it's difficult for each of us individually to make our own personal schedules work with our own full-time jobs. Take that and multiply it by 4.
Yeah.
And I mean, they use the term like, wrangling cats, but
it's a miracle. Is a Hollywood talent, who isn't making things easy by any stretch.
I do want to take a moment. One, I'll say, you guys mentioned origin stories. I still remember when I became attached to the podcast. At the time, we had a very small sort of video team that I still work with at Cinema Blend. And it was just one of our sort of production meetings. And they were like, oh, we might try to do a podcast. And kind of no one seemed excited about it. But I was already a podcast fan, and I threw my hand up. I was like, let me do that. I was like, don't let anyone else do that. Let me do that. Because I think I know what it should be, and I think I know how to do it. And one, I mean, on a personal note, you guys knew each other before this, but you guys met me through this podcast. I was working with Sean for a while.
Not to like be overly like dramatic or sentimental, but like it's weird to think of a time when you weren't in my life. It's weird. I just kind of always assume you were always there.
Yeah, even like Jake and I's early days, I'm like, Gabe must have been there, right? He was there.
You guys are now 3 of my best friends, like
brothers.
That's I mean, and I can't understate that, and that comes from a silly idea, and you guys, everyone committing to doing it, and I mean, you say brothers, but brothers in like. I think we've all been pissed at each other in the way that brothers can be pissed at each other and get over it. I think I've apologized to you guys before for, think like in that way of like,
I don't trust friends that honestly say, oh, we've never been mad at each other. Oh, then I'm like, oh, then you guys aren't really good friends then, because that really good friends implies that you've all gotten mad at each other.
Also, when you're putting up with someone like me who's anxiety and driven all the time,
any human being,
these guys have put up with a lot, and I love them. So,
on the personal note, I do want to mention that of just how if we were telling people today that this show is over and that we're done after this, you guys would be as much a part of my life as you are now, I think. And maybe we wouldn't be able to get together every week like this and speak for a couple hours and yada yada yada, but the friendship's going to last forever. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. On a non-personal note, on a kind of a professional note, something that I'm very proud of, I'm proud of all 4 of us, and I'm proud of this show, is we've really done something special. Like we're not the biggest show in the world. We didn't come up with the idea of interviewing celebrities, but we really did something new by tapping into the junket system for this. And we've benefited from that. And other people have done it, which is great. That's not even a competitive note of just, it felt like we were at the beginning of that, of people really finding a way to leverage that. And even the technical sense of getting the four of us, getting this to work. This video in front of you felt with the budget, I put budget in quotes, that we had to start with, and
remember Facebook Lives?
Yeah,
we did Facebook Lives initially.
Yeah, this was also on an emotional note and just a mental health note during the pandemic when everybody was home, and I know there are a lot more serious things to think about during the pandemic, but it was just nice to have this brotherhood and this show to go to, because when the pandemic hit and we were still doing the show every week, and we were still getting guests essentially every week. Yeah. We had guests every week during the pandemic.
During the pandemic.
You know what's funny?
And it just kind of helped me through, to be honest with you.
To the point, you bring that up, and that goes exactly to my point. When everyone switched to Zoom, we were the only show that I think was ready, because we had been doing that. I was like,
that's an interesting point.
I know how to do that.
Skype was our first.
When the industry switched to this format, we'd been doing it. We were ready to go, and I think that was a huge benefit to us.
I needed you guys. During that time. Like that was we were all just like, everybody was isolated. The whole world was shut down, and it was just, what kept us going was movies. It kept us going. It helped.
I mean, and even bigger. I mean, I know we're talking about the pandemic, but like, if you look over my right shoulder, you got Daenerys, who has been a part of this show since the beginning. She was, no joke, a puppy when we started. Thumbs up. And I just sort of, whenever, as we were talking and she kind of ran downstairs and sat down behind me, I kind of looked at her and just sort of thought about like, everything that's happened to all of our lives over the last 6 years. And I don't think any of us want to get into sort of the ups and downs and the highs and lows, but like, this show was the constant. This show was oftentimes for me, a lifeboat that I needed. It was kind of a fun poetic moment of Daenerys running downstairs.
It's constant. That's a good point.
Well, I'll say this. The one thing that I'm most proud of is that when we're at a junket, and the studios recognize that I'm part of the show, like, it's you three, there's just a rush to that. Yeah. There's a rush to that. Like if anyone sees one of us and they're like, oh, where are the other two?
That was the amount of times I often get like, where are the boys? And like, I don't have to ask who the boys are. I know exactly who it is they're talking about.
How insane is it that we are somehow like a comfort to the studio, in the sense of like, what I mean by that is like, they want to put their talent in front of us. Yeah. Which I find it's so, I mean, it's a privilege and an honor. A privilege. Like these studios want, like, because, and again, this is not a tap ourselves on the back thing. We're just celebrating this thing.
I was just saying, that guy that wrote that comment is hating this episode right now.
I don't care because this is, we put so much of our life into this. I have no problem commenting on it. It's not, I agree with you
100%.
But I do think at the end of the day, it's like an honor to be known by these studios as people that they want to put their talent in front of. Like, you have to understand, like, the first time we ever had like a major actor on our show was Joaquin Phoenix, I would argue.
And I don't know who an actor before.
I think we had Ty Sheridan maybe, but not to knock Ty Sheridan.
But there's a difference between again,
like
nothing, not specific, but someone who's it's hard to get in that they don't,
Joaquin
they can just say no
for Joker too. Like Joaquin
for the movie that he won the Oscar for.
And Joaquin is not somebody you put in front of people. Like he's
not someone you get at all.
No. And so that was, to me, that was a turning, like the Alfonso Cuarón was like the turning point in interviews. I know we have to get to this ending thing and then we'll wrap up. But in terms of
Sean has an actual family that he
when we got Joaquin Phoenix, though, there was a tide turned. And then they put Tom Hanks in front of us for 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
And then he wanted to come back. And then he sends us all letters after the interviews are over. Like, you have to understand, like that stuff is still mind blowing. It's not like, hey guys, look at us, we're awesome. No, we are all in shock. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's insane.
I think I can put a button on that with this before we get to. We have a little trivia that I want us to quickly go through before we close out. But I don't know. I'm curious how people will be able to relate to this. You guys will know what I'm saying, but it was the feeling of when we first decided we wanted to try to do guests, the focus, and Sean and I did a lot of that. You guys helped a lot. Like, it was built on the back of the clout and like the respect that you guys already had from your careers, but we were trying to convince everyone to let us do this additional stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was a grind. Like, it was cold, it was like cold calling and
30 minutes
cold emails and
I know.
But it was looking for every single, I was on IMDb Pro looking for the most random person that could maybe get me an email address or a phone call just to get people on there from when the moment that and I don't know that I can say when it changed, but when we started getting emails of, hey, would you guys like to have this guest on, was like, oh my God, it finally paid off. Like, it felt like we had been building and working to get a reputation. Again, you guys had already been established, which is a great head start for anyone that wants to do this. But that moment when studios and PR and everything started looking at like, oh, this is a place we can go to send our talent, was a huge compliment.
I want to hear this trivia. I'm dying to hear this trivia.
So this should be fun. We'll go through it quickly.
Name the members of Real Blend.
If you guys want to keep your own score, you can, but I wasn't planning on keeping score.
We're keeping score.
For the fun of the game. Okay. This is some fun factoids kind of stuff to take us back.
Okay.
My first question for you, gentlemen, is how many total episodes are there actually of Real Blend? Now, this
includes bonus
full episodes. Wow. So we're on 300 of actual full episodes where we say welcome, welcome. We also have bonus episodes, which consist of additional interviews, and we also have a run of premium episodes.
Are you giving us multiple choice?
Wow,
no.
Wow!
I just want you to take a guess, and whoever's closest can win this. But what do you think? This is episode 300.
Okay.
How many episodes of content?
And you can't go over. If you go over,
okay, Bob Barker, calm down.
I was just gonna go with
whoever's closest.
Yeah, closest.
Okay. I swear to God, if I'm like one over.
No, yeah.
Okay, Jake,
what
do you
have? A guess down?
I got 550.
Okay.
Oh, 550. I went with 425.
Okay.
425.
I did 375.
375.
Well, because if you think about it, we did more than 100 episodes of the premium.
Did we?
Did we?
So here's the total, and then I'll give you the breakdown. We have made a total of 523 episodes of content.
Oh my God! Wow. Okay.
This should be fairly accurate, unless some, one of the things I missed something. That should be spot on. So this is God. This is 300 main episodes, 77 bonus episodes, and we've done 100. We did 146 episodes of premium.
Holy God!
I knew we did a lot of. Wait, do I get that point?
Sure. How are we not? Why are we rich? We should be rich.
Wait, are you not?
What the hell?
Jake and I are making Jake and I are making Joe Rogan money. What are you doing?
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, we signed that $400 million deal.
I'm taking that point.
Fine.
All right, a second. I have. What is the date of our first episode premiered?
Ooh.
Oh.
I'm looking for exact month.
Awards blend
of the first episode of our show premiered. First episode ever that touched the airwaves. And I recommend that no one go back and listen to it.
Yeah, for the love of God, please don't.
Can we do month and year?
Do month and year, but throw a date on there. I'm looking for a specific date. Take a guess. I think you guys all know the month and year. I think you know.
Yeah, I know that. I'm gonna go.
This is more for fun.
Let's do. Okay. All right.
You both locked in?
I should know this.
What's funny is I actually don't think I know the year. I'm not entirely sure.
Kev, what'd you put down?
I put January 5th, 2018.
Sean?
I put November 29th, 2018.
Jake?
I put January 8th, 2018.
The actual date that the first episode dropped is January 18th, 2018.
My birthday?
Wow.
Is that your that is your birthday?
Yeah, that's my birthday.
Yeah. Episode 1.
Really?
Bonus point.
So Kevin gets that point.
Yeah.
No, you're closer
I think you were
than me.
closer.
Yeah,
what'd you mark?
I had January 5th. You did 8th.
Oh, okay.
Bonus point. What was the name of the show for that episode?
Awards Blend.
Awards Blend.
Awards Blend?
Okay.
What an awful name, by the way.
Yeah.
Wait, what was the first date of our show? January what?
January 18th, my birthday.
Yeah, I will say, speaking of, I hated Real Blend when I was outvoted for Real Blend. Not even by you guys. I think it was just sort of across.
The name?
There was like a committee.
He wanted to call it Gabe and Friends.
I love the name. I love our show's name. Also,
Company.
If you're on YouTube, shout out to my dad. I think he made the shirt that Gabe's wearing.
Yes.
And my jacket too.
Or no, he made the jacket. I made the jacket.
And then we had the other. Show
this
your
was
shirt,
for
though.
we did a little
That's
charity.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a few more if you guys will.
Go.
Okay.
Can you name the 4 individuals that made an appearance on episode 1?
What?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can.
Wait, the 4 besides us?
The 4 individuals that made an appearance on episode 1.
Besides us, or in addition to us?
The 4, all 4 of them.
Can I share my answer?
Sure.
I'm still.
Is it Kevin? Is it Kevin, Sean, Jake, and Gabe?
No, it wasn't Gabe.
Just take a guess. This is for fun, boys. This is for fun.
Hold on.
Do we know?
Sean?
Are you sure Gabe wasn't in the first episode?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember that. But
That's like what was it? Isn't like Kramer not in the first episode of Seinfeld?
Okay, can I just answer? This is more
Go
fun.
ahead.
Yeah,
It's more fun. The 4 individuals are Jake, Sean, Kevin, and I famously was silent for many episodes.
Right.
But rearing her head for the first time in episode 1 is Daenerys.
Oh,
We got Daenerys.
Okay, that's a trick question. That's a trick question.
Hey, she's just as valuable as a member of this team as anybody.
But if she did
funny.
bark, she was in the
She's
episode.
in.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
in.
She made an appearance.
Remember the window washers at your apartment?
my God.
How often we couldn't record?
Oh my God. For people that don't know what we're talking about, I used to live in an apartment that had these massive windows that overlooked the Lake of Chicago. And my dog is, to say the least, not a fan of the window washers. And it always happened that they started washing my windows as we were rolling on Real Blend. And Daenerys does not understand the concept of, hey, please be quiet, we're recording. So now it's much better that I'm down here in a basement.
All right,
which makes life better.
A couple more fun ones, and then we can move on. I have a few more, but we can definitely get through these next 2. What was the first movie we reviewed on the show?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
I don't know if this is the first, but this is the first one I remember.
Yeah. And I'll give you a hint. Knowing when the show started is not going to help you.
Oh, interesting. So then maybe mine's not. Okay. Well, I have my answer. I'm gonna say it either.
Can I ask? Would this have been a movie we were reviewing because it was coming out on a different platform, or was it an older film? Was it a newer movie at the time, or an older film at the time?
It was a newer movie. But what was the
I think I know what it is.
Okay.
Just take a guess.
I have zero
Okay. All right.
idea.
Sean is going to abstain from answering a question.
No, it was the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman is a January horror release.
Interesting. That
Kevin,
doesn't sound like it's
several
right.
years after we started the show.
Yeah, that was several years out.
Also, the Boogeyman came out in the summer.
Kev
I did Ready Player One.
and Jake.
I did The Last Jedi.
It was The Last Jedi, which came out the fall before the show started.
Now, I thought Rise of Skywalker.
No.
I just wish y'all cared as much about this show as I do.
So
Here's
true.
another one you guys will love. Who did Sean introduce first on episode 1?
Okay, I'm gonna. That's a great question. I'm gonna say Kevin, because I think statistically speaking, Kevin gets the introduction first.
No,
more
I don't.
so. I think you do.
I don't think I
Kevin
do.
thinks it's Jake. Jake thinks it's Kevin. Sean, who do you think you introduced first?
I think it's Kevin.
I think it's Jake.
Kevin.
So we know episode 300, Kevin got introduced first. In episode
Hell yeah,
1,
yes.
Sean introduced Jake first.
I knew it.
Why am I celebrating this? Why am I celebrating not being introduced?
Well, you got 300.
At least it's alphabetical, you know.
Sean, how often do you have to utilize the skills that you've learned with the boys to sort of how you handle
Feed
us?
our egos.
Every show. Every show.
Jake got 1. Kevin gets 300.
This one comes with a fun note. In episode 1, Sean introduced you as 2 of my really good friends. But in episode 2, he downgraded you to 2 of my favorite colleagues.
What happened in that week?
Yeah, I was like,
Week 3, it's a couple of guys I know.
two strangers.
Two acquaintances.
Yeah, who just showed up.
That's hilarious.
If somebody listening has the time to go to every intro of every Real Blind episode, for
And please
300
don't.
episodes,
Please find something else to do.
Tell
I beg you.
us the statistical breakdown of Kevin versus Jake's.
I would love to
introductions.
know. I honestly
know.
would love to know. Yeah, I may have to do that.
That was beautiful. Well, we have gone well over. I will do one last thing. One last thing I wanted to say a huge thank you. I think it's a fun celebration. Sean, thank you for going late with us. Apologize to your family for us, please.
Who?
We are his family.
I wanted to share with the audience at home that Donovan, the amazing Donovan, he's contributed with games. He made this awesome poster that I hang on my wall with pride from
Amazing.
our live show with Tarantino.
It's on my refrigerator at home.
It's amazing. He also made this amazing poster.
Yes.
Which I don't think we've shared on socials yet, but when this goes up, it will be on socials. I don't know if Donovan...
Oh, I didn't notice the Be Kind Rewind sticker until I saw it just now.
So many great details of the dates for awards blend and all this stuff.
Did you guys notice that the zeros and 300 are film reels?
Yeah.
He's got the first episode of Awards Blend. Does that say 1/8?
It does. Let me double check. But I think it was. I have our actual feed.
Okay.
And that's
Because
okay.
1/8 was the date that I wrote down.
That would be pretty great. But no, according
That's episode
to
100. That's episode 100 is 1/8.
Yeah, but
No,
so
but
that's
if you
on
look at the one on the bottom, the one on the very bottom.
It is
Awards
right.
blend.
It is right. He's right. It's 1/8. It's 1/8. Did you nail it, Jake?
I nailed it.
Oh wow, you nailed it.
I'm really thinking. I was like, I feel like I would have remembered if it was on my birthday.
It's just a little typo in my doc.
Okay, so I feel like I get 2 points for that. I'm gonna give myself 2 points.
Sure.
Tarantino volumes 1 through 4.
Crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Hey,
What's crazy is to think that you
where
could
was
fit
4?
all of those on a VHS tape.
Yeah.
At his house. Oh, the
4 was at his
VHS
house.
tape is such an incredible. You have to watch us on YouTube this week just to see Donovan.
Yeah.
Also, it's going to be hanging over my shoulder because
Yeah.
I have to get that.
Also,
I gotta get that frame too.
How do we get that printed out in a
That's a
poster
good question.
frame?
Well, I'll talk to Donovan and see if we'll see if there's something we can do. I wanted to ask if should we try to turn this into a T-shirt? Comment down below, listeners, if you want to somehow own this piece of art from
great.
Donovan, and maybe I can talk with Donovan and see if there's something we can figure out. But first, let us know if you're interested. T-shirts, posters. I don't know. Is it something you'd be proud to have? Let us know.
I would like to.
We can figure it out. I also want to point out we didn't talk about it. I was just talking to someone about the Real Blend Live in Chicago, our first like official meetup where we were all there and we like organized the event. How that was just an amazing moment where.
Well, and also too,
get to
remember
meet
the
everyone.
massive snowstorm that came in and we all got snowed in for.
But also, I was also reminded of the kid that recognized Sean and we thought he was being a jerk.
Yes. but do you remember what I remember about that moment? Is
Jake
we
wanted to
thought
fight
this?
that guy.
Well, I thought we all collectively like pumped up and we're like, no one's making fun of our Sean. Like, I just remember that for a moment we had this like very like friends come together and we're like, yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening.
We were also like we were all on top of the world after meeting everybody and everyone was so kind and it just felt so cool to meet all these people this thing we had been doing for almost a year. Yeah. Crazy. Anyway, thank you, Donovan. I'll take a look. People
Thank you,
chime in
everybody.
Thank you, everybody. That's the last
honestly,
thing we have to
thank
say.
you, everybody who
crazy
listened
ride.
to this show and contributed in any way, shape, or form. Like the show doesn't exist if people don't tune in on a regular basis. So
I think the only way to end the episode would be to say this is only the beginning.
Nice.
all right, that's a good way to put it.
Sean, I do want to know our usual call to action. We have several call to actions this week. Hit the comments with all of these. But I do want to know whether you've been here for the whole ride or you're a newer listener. Let us know if you can remember the first episode that you listened to or interview or the first time you tuned in. And if you feel like it, drop your favorite moment or memory with us would be wonderful down in the comments. But thank you all.
Right.
As everyone has said, thank you all. Because this doesn't... We'd just be talking to ourselves every week and that we'd have fun.
Yeah.
But you guys are what make it worth it. So
I'm just really happy the Rise of Skywalker moment ended up in Sean's intro, because that's one of my proudest moments I've ever had.
Nobody was gonna say, nothing was gonna save that guy's screening of that movie. The Rise of Skywalker ruined his
That's
Rise
one of those. If you know, you know.
That's up there with our video from Toronto of all of us.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All right, let's get us out of here before we.
That's for Real
we
Blend.
ruin the show.
That's our OnlyFans.
It's for the IG Live.
Go to our
don't forget.
Real Blend OnlyFans.
Oh wait, the IG Live will have happened. Yeah, that's right. Hope you guys
Thank you
had
for
fun
whoever
during that.
tuned in.
Yes. In the meantime, follow us on social media. We are at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovac, and the show is at Real Blend. We will talk to you next week for episode number 301. So until then,
Dunkirk.
Kelly Marcel.
Who?
She directed Venom 3.
Okay, great.